All right, so that was the Netropolis CYBERPUNK custom Magic set. So that was a lot of fun to play it.
It was fun.
What did you think, Abby?
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It wasn't my favorite set. I mean, it did have sort of a, like, you know, for all of the cards that are in the set, it did kind of have a vanilla feel to it.
Okay, well, we can go into more detail in a second. So what we'll do is, if you guys haven't seen this before, what Abby and I do is we rate every set according to our patented CATS
Meow
rating system, where C stands for complexity, A is for awesomeness, T is for translation, how well does it translate the idea of what it wants to do into Magic cards, the flavor, and S is just satisfaction, overall satisfaction. So why don't we start with C, complexity. Whew. So I think we're going to start off here with a D+ from me. And that might sound very harsh, but let me explain. So I think on first look, this set doesn't look extremely complex, but when we were playing the games, the complexity kind of hits you in the face.
It does, especially with a few of the mechanics like hack and privilege.
Right. Well, for me, some of the biggest ones were, first of all, upload. Because upload, it's very, don't get me wrong, it's very cool, I like it, but it adds more cards in your hand, gives you more options per turn. It also lets you see what your opponent's options are, so it's more things to keep track of that your opponent has that they can use against you, so it's just, it adds a layer of complexity right there, where it's just more choices that you have and more things that you have to play around from your opponent. And then on top of that, you have the arm mechanic, which is, again, I love it, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I like that too.
But it brings up this, for every single arm creature that you have, suddenly you have to think, oh, how should I rearrange my power and toughness this turn? Do I need to equip here? Should I just leave it on the arm thing? It's another, again, now we have two kind of thick layers of complexity in most of the Netropolis games.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, like you were saying with hack, the fact that hack cards, like take for example, malware here, it says hack, then target creature gets -1/-1 for each card you've hacked this turn. The fact that it only counts hacked cards and not milled cards, when you clearly have, you know, support cards like Neural Drive here that mills the opponent, it's very unintuitive and it feels bad and very strange. So I'm not sure if that was intentional by the designer, but if it wasn't, then I think they should definitely fix that for sure. And
absolutely,
if nothing else, make sure that the hack cards take into account all milled cards for the turn.
Yeah.
And one other,
make it a lot more effective that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you also mentioned privilege.
Yeah.
And yeah, privilege, like when we got to the games, it's not obvious at first that, you know, attacking is a way to have privilege, because when I think privilege, I think kind of, you know, sitting haughty on your throne and not really doing much and gaining life. And
letting your minions handle things for you, type of deal.
But as we saw in the games, it was kind of the opposite of that, where the more aggressive one was able to have privilege, and keeping track of who has privilege and suddenly gaining or losing privilege, it's another layer of complexity.
Right. And if you have privilege, you want to keep that privilege, so that's another thing that you, apart from your life total, that's another thing that you have to think about in defense.
Right, so here you are, you're thinking about, oh god, I have to play around my opponent's uploaded cards, I have these options for uploaded cards in my hand, should I switch my arm creatures around, and I need to keep privilege, or do I not need to keep privilege, or do I need to take my opponent off privilege? It's a lot to think about outside of simply just normal Magic.
Exactly.
So, again, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, it can be exhausting playing these games, it can be full of complex and great decisions, but it is complex.
Yes.
So, and that's why we give it a D+ here. Not a straight D, but just a D+, I think, is fair.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Alright, so that was a lot for C. So why don't we move on to awesomeness. So for awesomeness here, I think we'll give it a C.
I agree with that, because I like it, but I don't love it, you know?
Yeah, and for me anyway, like, I love upload, and I love the idea of hack, not necessarily the implementation, but I like the idea of it, and the arm mechanic, also very cool. Those are probably the three most awesome things for me.
Yeah.
But there's a couple things that take it down, in my opinion, and one of the biggest ones is just kind of how blue just felt unplayable in this set.
Yeah, that was a disappointment.
So yeah, it felt like Battle for Zendikar, where green was unplayable, and that really brought down the set. Here we have blue, that's basically unplayable. Half of black is also unplayable because of hack, and also half of white is really bad because of a lot of the privilege cards just aren't very good in that color. So it just really narrows down the amount of cards that you can pick during draft or sealed. And as you saw in our games, a lot of our decks look similar with like the Soylent Soakers or the red aggro cards.
Yeah, it was like, I feel like I was playing the same deck like every time.
Exactly,
you know?
and that's only fun for so long.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the set It does mill with hack. It does exiling with upload. It does life total calculations with privilege. And it does equipment tokens with ARM. It just feels like it's kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
I wish it maybe had just picked 2, maybe 3 of those things instead and just kind of focused on them a bit more. Like, for example, I love upload. I wish there were a few more things that worked with upload. Like maybe hack could just be something that interacts with upload. Maybe privilege could interact with upload. Just, I don't think, since this set is only ever going to be played by itself, I don't think you have to really worry too much about parasitic mechanics, just not really working with the rest of Magic. I think it's perfectly fine to just, take these cool mechanics and go further rather than spreading yourself too thin.
Yeah.
Which is what I felt was going on here. So next we'll go to T for translation. How well does this set translate Cyberpunk and Netropolis into Magic cards? And, I think I'll give it a B.
Yeah, they did a fairly good job. I mean, obviously there's clear factions throughout the set. There's the hackers, there's the privileged people, there's there's corporate hacker, like there's the corporation type aspect. Like, it's a very interesting set. There's artifacts, there's creatures, there's mutants. Like, it's, in terms of flavor and translation, like, I do like that aspect of the set. It's very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I agree pretty much 100% with that. Also got to say, just the mechanics, upload and hack, just seeing those, I was already sold on the set. Didn't even care what they did. I was going to play it anyway.
Yeah, at first glance, they seem pretty cool.
And the only problem that brings it down for me a little bit, again, a B is a very good grade, but what brings it down for me a little bit is kind of on the macro level. I just didn't get what the identity of Netropolis was supposed to be. Like, what's the conflict here? Who are the characters? What do they want? And what's going on? Like, what is this society that they've built here? I mean...
Yeah, what's the story?
Like you said, there's a lot of great cyberpunky goodness, but that's what it is. It just kind of feels like generic cyberpunky goodness. And there should be a lot of that in the set, don't get me wrong, but I wish there were a few more commons and uncommons that maybe reference the planeswalkers.
Right. And in terms of characters, I mean, the only main character we really got to see in the whole set was Sick Nick.
Right. So wouldn't it be cool if there was an uncommon Sick Nick's monkey? Something.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
I think that would help translate the flavor of what Netropolis is trying to be into cards, rather than it just being kind of a generic cyberpunk set, which is fine. But I think it could be even better if there was just
I think there's some tweaking that could be done here, and I think it could be an even better set than it is now.
For sure. All right, so let's move on to a final one: Satisfaction. So an A for Satisfaction would mean that I want to draft it again right now. A B would mean, yeah, I definitely want to draft it, play it again soon. Mm-hmm. A C would mean, yeah, if a friend asked me to play it, I probably would. A D would mean, I'd rather not play it again. And an F is never again. So based on that, I'd have to say, I have to give this a D for now.
Yeah.
And that might seem harsh, but I do like this set. Don't get me wrong. But if someone asked me to play the set, I would say just wait until it's updated.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%, because I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done this set and a lot of cleaning up to do.
Yeah, to be fair, the creator of the set has said the set is still in development. So that's, again, this is nothing against him. This is just, I love this set. I want it to be as good as it can, but there are some things that definitely need to change if I were to play it again. I think the most obvious is changing hack. At the very least, it should count mill cards, but I think that's not even what this set really wants. I think hack, at its best, would interact with exiled cards. Because when I think hacking, I think doing something illegal, doing something that's against the rules.
Yeah.
And interacting with exiled cards, that's not something that Magic does very often. So it would feel really cool if you could just, hack. You may play a card from exile, maybe even from your opponent's exile.
Ooh, yeah. I mean, that's very flavorful in the spirit of hacking.
Right, and maybe you'd still have to pay mana costs or whatever to keep it fair, but, just something like that, again, feels more hacking. It interacts with more what the set's doing. Yeah. And also, privilege, just, it feels off to me. We have cards in the set, Riot Mod Trooper, it's like he's a mutant and he's a soldier, but he has privilege. Again, the flavor, that's just the flavor right there. When I think privilege in Cyberpunk, I think, white rooms above the clouds and people just kind of living immortality. I don't think of a mutant trooper at all for privilege.
That's Very, very confusing message.
So I think, yeah, privilege, if it's going to stay in, I think it just needs to figure out what it wants to be. And when it figures out what it wants to be, it needs to just do that harder. Maybe instead of caring about life total, it could care about cards in hand, like we said before, or something else. Or maybe it could just be an enters the battlefield bonus, so that way you don't have to keep track of it all the time. You know? Something like that, just make it work better. And lastly, we need to make blue playable. Blue is just basically unplayable as it is. I mean, if you have like a blue-red tempo deck, maybe that would work. But that's really about it, and I don't even know how good that would be.
Yeah, and again, the set is still, in the works,
right.
So we're playing with an unfinished set.
Absolutely nothing against the creator. I love what he's created so far. I want to play more. I want this set to be as great as it can, and if it ever gets a big update, I would gladly jump right back in and check it out again.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have no qualms with revisiting it after it's been worked on a little bit.
For sure. But yeah, so anyway, that was Abby and mine's thoughts. Of course, we don't have the final say in this. Our words aren't chiseled in stone or anything, so definitely let us know what you thought of Netropolis in the comments below, and if you have any custom Magic sets of your own that you'd like to see us play and rate, be sure to let us know, and we'll see you in the next videos.
See you then. Meow.